All right, so today we're using the quadratic formula to solve quadratic equations. All right, so in our last lesson of Unit 6, we discussed how to solve quadratic equations by factoring. Sometimes, however, it's not possible to factor an equation. For example, if we look down here at example B, all right, using the AC method, right, we have A, we have B, we have C. 1 times 4 gives us 4. But do we have any factors of 4 that add to make 15? No. So this quadratic equation is actually prime. I can't factor it. However, I still want to find out what x equals. So I need a different way of solving this equation that will allow me to find out what x equals without being able to factor it. All right, so for this, we use what is called the quadratic formula. Mathematicians way smarter than I am, have figured out that if we use this formula for a quadratic equation, we find a solution every single time. Sometimes our answer is ugly, but we always have an answer. All right, so first steps. Number 1, get the equation equal to 0. If it's not equal to 0, you need to manipulate the equation so that it is equal to 0. This will not work if it's not equal to 0. Next step, identify A, B, and C. All right, so if you've got them in order, so x squared first, then x, then your constant, so the number with no x, then they're alphabetical, right? So looking at A, we have A, then we have B, and then we have C. Step 3, plug the numbers into the formula. All right, this is why we had to identify them, right? Because you notice up here, I've got A's, I've got B's, I've got C's. We had to know what they were so we could plug them in. And last step, simplify completely. All right, so let's just practice here, all right? So looking at A, we're going to rewrite our formula. So x equals negative b is the first thing. Well, this is b. 7 is b. So we're going to say negative 7 plus or minus the square root of b squared. B is 7. So 7 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 11, all over 2 times a, which is 2. All right, so now we've got it plugged in. Our last step, and this is a super duper important one, simplify completely. All right, so let's work on that. Let me scroll down a little bit here so we got some space to work. All right, so x equals negative 7 plus or minus, and this is where we can start simplifying, right? 7 squared is 49. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Times negative 11 gives me positive 88 over 2 times 2, which is 4. All right, so now we started to simplify. Now we need to take care of this under the radical, right? So 49 plus 88 is 137. All right, so rewrite this to make it easier. X equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 137 over 4. Excuse me one second. All right, so remember I told you that sometimes we're going to have ugly answers. This is an ugly answer. Okay, I can't do any more simplifying because 137 doesn't have a square root. In fact, if I plug it into my calculator, it's going to spit out just exactly that. It's going to tell me that the square root of 137 is 137. Yeah, square root of 137 is a square root. It doesn't simplify, it doesn't do anything with it. That's it. All right. More on this plus and minus thing later. But for right now, let's practice another one. Let's look at B, which is our example we knew that definitely didn't factor. So once again, we know A is an integer 1 here. B is a 15. This is C. And for this one, let's practice kind of simplifying a few things as we go. All right, so negative b, negative 15 plus or minus the square root of b squared. Well, b is 15, 15 squared is 125, minus 4a, so negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, times c, which is 4, so negative 16, all over 2a. Well, 2 times a, which is 1, is just 2. Excuse me, not 125, 220, 225. Okay, super important you do your math right here, folks. All right, and so then all I have to simplify is under my radical, and 225 minus 16 is 209. So let's clean this up. X equals negative 15 plus or minus the square root of 209 over 2. Once again, this is kind of ugly looking, but that is our answer. If you wanted to double check to make sure that this square root of 209 didn't simplify any, you are welcome to do so. But when I plug it in, my calculator just tells me it's the square root of 209. That's as simple as she gets. All right, let's look at C, because C's got something unique about it, something that's different about the other two examples that we've done before. Do you notice something? Yeah, it's not equal to 0. All right, our first condition for using the quadratic formula was it has to be equal to 0. So we need to get everything over here moved over here. So we're going to start with this x squared. So subtract x squared from both sides. So that gives me 5x squared plus 3x equals negative 1. Add 1 to both sides. So 5x squared plus 3x plus 1 equals 0. All right, now we label. We have our a. You know what? If I write this as x squared and not 5 squared, that might be helpful. So we have our a, we have our b, we have our c. All right, x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 9, minus 4ac. So negative 4 times 5 is negative 20 times, times c, which is 1. So this is just negative 20 over 2a. So 2 times 5 is 10. All right, simplify what's underneath of my radical. So 9 minus negative 20 makes this negative 11. And let's clean this up. So x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of negative 11 over 10. All right, for right now, guys, anytime you see a negative number under a square root, I want you to leave it alone. We'll learn in a couple lessons, maybe the next one, exactly what we're supposed to do with a negative number under a square root, but for right now, leave it. Even if you get something that's like negative 36, all right, the square root of negative 36. Well, you know the square root of 36 is 6, all right, but because of this negative sign, even if you could simplify it for right now, I want you to leave it, please, all right? All right, so that's our examples, and we have a few more on the back side of this page, but I'm not going to bore you by doing a whole lot of them. I do want to point out something like h here. Number one, we know it's got to be equal to 0. So we're going to move this 7. 2x squared minus 7 equals 0. But we've got a problem, right? We're missing a piece. What piece are we missing? We have the x squared. We have the constant. We're missing the x term, right? We don't have a b. So remember, in math, anytime we don't have something, we can plug in 0 as a placeholder. All right, so now we have an A, we have a B, and we have a C, and we can plug it in just like we would before. All right, make sure you have all 3 parts. Do not try to do this without having all 3 parts or having the parts in the wrong order. It is not going to give you the desired results. For example, G, here I know I got to make it equal to 0. If I just subtract 5x, and I say 2x squared plus 9 minus 5x equals 0. And if I go to label this A, B, C, this isn't going to work. It is not going to give me my desired results because we're not in the right order. You all notice this 9 and the 5x, they need to be traded. So it should always be in the order of x squared, then x, then constant. If you have it in any order, any other order, you are not going to achieve the desired results. You are not going to get the proper answer. So make sure they're in order before you go plugging them in. All right, one last thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to explain this plus or minus thing, right? So we've been told the quadratic formula is x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, but what in the world is the deal with this plus or minus thing? All right, so let's talk about it for a bit. You all know the square root of 25 is 5, right? Because 5 times 5 equals 25. But what else equals 25? negative 5 times negative 5 equals 25, right? Because a negative times a negative gives us a positive. Same way if we were to say the square root of 36, well, that's 6, but negative 6 times negative 6 also gives us 36. Or if I said the square root of 81, well, it's 9, but also negative 9. All right, do you all see that here, how for every single thing that has a square root, we have both a positive possibility and a negative possibility. So generally, if we've not specified, we want the positive number, all right? Which is why our quadratic formula specifies. They say, be sure to allow for both the positive possibility and the negative possibility. And that's why that's here. Later on in the unit, we will be actually using this, utilizing it, and splitting this apart so you have two answers instead of just a plus or minus thing. So, but for right now, I just wanted you to have the background information, understand why it's there and why it's important that you don't just write plus or just write minus. Make sure you have that plus or minus sign. All right. As always, send me an email if you have any questions, and good luck with your homework.